Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going way back, like ancient Rome. We're diving into Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, chapter 10.
Oh, yeah, this one's a class.
You guys really wanted this one, huh?
Yeah.
To see how a Roman emperor's personal journal, steeped in that Stoic philosophy, could be, well, relevant for all of US.
And get this, chapter 2, even though it was written almost 2,000 years ago.
Wild.
I know, right?
Ah.
It's packed with insights that are, like, shockingly relevant to the things we're all dealing with today.
Like peering through time, right?
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Aurelius starts off with a line that, well,
Kind of grabs you.
yeah. He says, begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial.
Not exactly the most uplifting way to start your day.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Right. Sounds a little, well, pessimistic maybe.
It might seem that way on the surface, but it's not about being negative.
Okay, so what's he getting at?
It's more about, like, mental preparation. Like, he's acknowledging that, look, every day is going to have some difficult people, some tough situations.
The reality of being alive.
Right. And instead of pretending it won't happen or getting blindsided.
You're ready.
Exactly. He's choosing to face it head on, mentally prepare himself so those things don't throw him off balance.
So instead of reacting emotionally, getting all frustrated.
Yeah, he can pause and respond intentionally.
Makes sense.
And then he takes it a step further, which I think is really interesting.
Let's hear it.
He says all these people, the busybodies, the ungrateful, all of them, they're acting this way out of ignorance of good and evil.
Hold on. Is he excusing bad behavior? Because sometimes people are just jerks, right?
Not condoning it, but he's shifting the perspective.
Oh, I see. Go on.
Instead of going straight to anger or judgment.
Yeah, which is tempting.
Totally. He's saying, try to understand where they're coming from. Maybe they lack awareness. Maybe they're projecting their own pain. It doesn't make it right.
Right.
But it might help us react differently.
With a little more compassion.
Yeah, exactly. Like that busybody might be deeply insecure.
And the ungrateful person.
Could be struggling with their own stuff. It's about seeing the bigger picture, not taking it personally.
Doesn't mean they get to walk all over us, though, right?
Of course not. But it's a reminder that everyone's coming from their own place with their own experiences.
Their own baggage.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that baggage is clouding their vision, making them act out.
Which honestly feels super relevant to what we're seeing today, right? All the judgment, the negativity online, everywhere.
Totally. Maybe a dose of Aurelian understanding would do us all some good, you know?
Agreed. Makes this ancient text feel, I don't know, surprisingly timely.
Right. It's not just about surviving the Roman Empire. It's about navigating being human, which hasn't really changed all that much.
So we've got a strategy for the difficult people. What else does Aurelius suggest for living well?
He goes on to break down, like, what a human being is. 3 parts: body, soul, and the external world.
Okay, so body first. He calls it a little flesh and breath.
A bit stark, but I get it.
It's the point across.
Yeah.
So what's he saying?
He's pointing out how fragile we are, how temporary our physical form is.
And then there's the soul.
The ruling part, he calls it. The mind. That's where our true power lies, he says. Not in strength or possessions, but in our thoughts.
And how we see the world.
Exactly. Which brings us to that third part. The external world. All the stuff that happens. The good, the bad, the ugly. Aurelius is really clear about this.
What's that?
We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it.
That's where the Stoic idea of focusing on what we can control comes in.
Bingo. It's not about denying reality, but about recognizing that our inner world, our thoughts, our responses, that's what we have power over.
It's like you can't stop the waves.
But you can learn to surf.
Love that analogy. So to recap, be ready for those difficult folks, understand where they're coming from, and focus on what we can control our own reactions.
That's a good start.
And we're just getting warmed up. There's one more thing that really struck me.
Oh, yeah. Lay it on me.
This line, throw away thy books, no longer distract thyself. Is he telling us to, like, stop reading?
Not quite. But it is a warning.
Against.
Getting so caught up in things, even good things like reading, learning, that we lose sight of what matters.
Oh, I see. Like getting distracted from actually living.
Yeah, being present. Back then, it was books.
And for us.
Social media, the news, even work or hobbies when they take over.
It's about finding that balance, isn't it? Engaging with the world, but not letting it consume you.
Exactly. Staying connected to yourself, even in the middle of all the external craziness.
Easier said than done.
For sure. But that's why this whole idea of focusing on what you can control is so important.
Okay, so we've got a good foundation here. how Aurelius approached his world, and how those same ideas can help us today.
And we're just scratching the surface. There's a lot more to uncover in this chapter. So much wisdom that's still relevant, still powerful after all these years. And he talks a lot about living in accordance with nature, right? Which was a huge thing for the Stoics.
So, like, go hug a tree. Get back to nature.
Not quite, though. I'm sure Aurelius wouldn't be against a little nature time.
Yeah, good point. But what does he mean then?
It's more about aligning your actions with reason, with virtue.
So use your head and do your heart. Make choices that make sense and are ethically sound.
Exactly. It all ties back to that demon we talked about before. Not a literal demon, remember?
Right. That inner guide, the voice of conscience.
Yeah, it's about listening to that, making choices that are in line with your, highest self.
Flooding with integrity.
Yes, not just reacting to whatever pressures or desires come up.
Which, let's be honest, is way harder than it sounds.
In this world, absolutely. Constant messages about what we should be doing, what we should be striving for.
So how do we block it all out?
That's where focusing on what we can control comes in again. We can't control the messages, but we can control our response to them.
Building that mental filter, tuning out the noise.
And tuning in to your own internal compass, which, Aurelius had to work at too.
He did.
Oh yeah, he was always reminding himself of these principles. That's what the meditations is, basically. His journal, his way to stay on track.
Which brings us to another point he brings up. Death. And he's not shying away from it.
Nope. He even says we should regulate every act and thought accordingly, as if we could die any moment.
That's a bit intense, no.
It's not supposed to be morbid, though. It's a call to oxytocin.
To do what?
To live fully. Appreciate each moment as if it were your last.
Because, well, you never know.
Exactly. Don't waste time on worry about the future or regretting the past.
To be here now.
Exactly. And he takes it even further, says if there are gods, they wouldn't want us to fear death. And if there aren't, well, then who cares?
Bold statement.
Right. He's basically saying worrying about death is pointless. Beyond our control, so why bother?
Better to just live this life.
Be the fullest, making choices that matter to you.
This is all sounding kind of like mindfulness, honestly.
Oh, there's a lot of overlap. Being present, accepting what is, focusing on what you can control, ancient wisdom, meeting modern practices.
Okay, so we've got dealing with tough people, focusing on our own reactions, living with purpose, and accepting that, well, we're all going to die someday.
It's a lot.
It is. But there's more, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. And this one might be the most mind-blowing of all. All is opinion.
Mm-hmm. Come again. Is he saying, reality is subjective?
That's the heart of it. Aurelius and the Stoics believed that how we see things, that shapes our reality.
So, same event, but two people's perception of it.
Could lead to totally different reactions, yeah.
So our thoughts really do have that much power.
According to the Stoics, absolutely. That's why they were so big on examining your beliefs.
If you think something is bad, it will be bad for you.
Even if it wouldn't be for someone else, it's our interpretation, not the event itself, that really determines our experience.
That's why they say to challenge your negative thoughts.
Yes. Identify those unhelpful patterns. That's how you change your emotional responses, live a better life.
It's empowering, in a way, isn't it? We have more control than we think.
Exactly. And it's not about pretending everything is perfect or denying difficult emotions.
So how do we do it? Become more aware of our thoughts, all that.
That's where the real work is. Lifelong journey. But mindfulness is a good starting point.
Paying attention to our thoughts, but without judgment.
Yes. Become a curious observer of your own mind.
Notice those patterns that might be holding us back.
And once you see them, you can start to question them. Is this really true? Is this the only way to see it?
Find a more helpful perspective.
Exactly. It's all about taking responsibility for your inner world. You choose your thoughts, and that shapes how you experience everything.
Man, this is hitting home today. In this world with all the information overload, it's we need these Stoic tools to stay sane.
I think so too. That's what makes Aurelius so amazing. Timeless guide to being human, offering wisdom that helps us thrive, even when things are tough.
So we've covered a lot. Dealing with difficult people, accepting death, understanding that how we see things matters more than we realize.
And we've got one more point to hit before we wrap up. Aurelius's take on bad actions. He quotes another philosopher, Theophrastus, who said that offenses done out of desire are worse than those done out of anger.
Now that's interesting. Because usually anger seems like the more destructive one, right?
It does. So why would they say that? Well, it's about motivation. Theophrastus says anger usually comes from a sense of injustice.
Like someone wrongs you.
Right. It's a hot, impulsive emotion, but it's often triggered by something external.
Someone cuts you off in traffic, you feel like they broke the rules, they wronged you.
And while that anger might lead to bad choices, it's still rooted in some idea of right and wrong, even if it's a bit messed up in the moment.
So anger can be justified?
Not exactly justified, but you can see the root of it.
Okay, but desire.
Desire is different. It's internal. A craving for something you see as pleasurable or beneficial, and often you're not thinking about the consequences.
So stealing because you want money, that's worse than lashing out in anger.
Because the motive is different. Anger, as messy as it is, often comes from feeling like some line was crossed. Desire, though, is about what you gain, often at someone else's expense.
That is a really interesting distinction. Makes you think about why you do the things you do.
And that's Aurelius's genius. He always pushes us to examine ourselves, our actions, but also our motives.
It's deep stuff.
It is like he's holding up a mirror to our souls, making us look at the ethical side of everything we do, even the small stuff.
And that's where real growth happens, I guess.
That's what he believed. Honest self-reflection, questioning your assumptions, that's the path to a better life.
It's kind of amazing how much is packed into just one chapter.
Right. Like, this guy was really thinking about life, huh?
And almost 2,000 years later, it's still so relevant.
That's the thing about human nature, I guess. Some things never change.
And that's what's cool about these deep dives, not just learning about philosophy.
It's about how to apply it to your life.
Yeah, exactly. So our listener can actually, I don't know, live better.
More meaningful, for sure. And I hope they're walking away from this feeling, like, empowered.
Empowered how?
Like realizing they do have more control over their experience than they might think.
Oh, yeah. It's not about pretending things are easy.
No, life is tough. But you can approach those tough things with more, I don't know, grace.
Resilience.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe even some peace in the middle of it all.
So what's the one thing from this chapter, if our listener could only take away one thing?
For me, it's that all is opinion idea.
The power of perspective.
Yes, our thoughts really do shape our reality. We choose how to interpret things, how much they affect us.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Oh, for sure. It's a practice.
Like a muscle you got to work out.
Exactly. Noticing your thoughts, especially the ones that cause you stress or suffering.
The negative self-talk, all that.
And then gently challenging those thoughts. Like, is this true? Is there another way to see this?
Find that more helpful perspective.
You got it. Taking ownership of your inner world. You're not just a victim of your thoughts.
Man, this has been a good one. I feel like I learned a lot, not just about Stoicism, but like for myself.
Me too. Aurelius is like a gift, you know? Meditations is a book you can come back to over and over.
Always something new to discover.
So listener, if you're out there, go check out chapter 2 yourself.
Yeah, read it slow, think about it, and see what speaks to you.
What resonates with your life, your challenges.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Right, and remembering that this whole journey to a better life, it's ongoing.
You never really arrive.
Exactly. It's about learning, growing, and being open to wisdom, even from a Roman emperor.
And that's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep reflecting, and keep diving deep into the wisdom of the world.
Happy diving.